Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have another review for you from the brand Borealis. They were founded back in 2013 and essentially they are a micro brand with a very vintage aesthetic, focusing on updating definitely classics of the past while taking advantage of today's modern manufacturing improvements. Now, as far as some key common characteristics and design language for this type of watch, I would consider this an everyday watch. And when you're looking for an everyday watch, you're of course going to want a versatile blend of sporty and dressy attributes. Now, this particular model, as you can clearly see, is definitely inspired by the Rolex Explorer, but it also has touches of other models in the line as well. And I think it is a nice kind of meshing and bonding of really what you can achieve when you're trying to make a really cool, versatile, everyday piece. This model is known as the Adraga, which is, and this is in stainless steel. It was originally released as a strap-only bronze model in a larger diameter, but now is available here in stainless steel at this really nice 39.5 millimeter diameter, which we'll get more into the details once we get this in hand. But I'd say if you're watching this review, definitely keep an open mind because to me this is more than just a blatant, Explorer homage. It definitely has a lot of other details and little features, I think, that really set it apart and actually make it to the thing is, everything flows so good, you just think, oh, Rolex, right? Because there's other things that are involved that are from Rolex models, like a Jubilee bracelet, but that's not Explorer-esque, is it? Or having a date window, not really an Explorer thing. So, and then of course the hands could be considered very, date justy. So, and then even the color palette is definitely very different than anything you're going to see on a standard Rolex. So, with that said, let's go ahead and take a closer look. Okay. Now, as you can see, the Adraga has some really nice proportions there. As far as dimensions go, it's 39.5 millimeter diameter with a 12 millimeter height. And then you're also going to have a 47.5 lug to lug. Of course, this is full 316L surgical stainless steel. So really nicely done there, with a nice little mixture of brushed and polished finishes there. Now, as far as the crystal goes, it has this really nice double dome to it, so you do get very little distortion, even at very harsh angles, very legible. You can see here, very slight dome, almost a boxed curve edge there on the ends, which ends up being very, very attractive and adding very minimal height. As you can see there, it doesn't add too much height to the side profile. Now, the crown is a screw down crown signed with the Borealis Bravo or B. So that's really nice. And then as far as the movement goes, it's going to be hidden here. But behind there beats the Miyota 9015 because this model does, of course, have a date. So really nice, 4 hertz movement, hacking, hand windable, modern, and many consider it to be kind of a nice alternative to some Swiss-made options. It's very thin, similar to the 2892, while also being quite robust, similar to the 2824. So it's very nice. As far as the dial goes, you can see it has that beautiful kind of sunburst fume dial. It does have applied indices and polished hands there, with the date window nicely framed at 6 o'clock. And then you do have actually BGW9 Swiss Superluminova. This is actually 300 meters water resistance or 30 atmospheres, so really, really water resistant, especially considering the thickness and the overall just kind of purpose of the watch. That's a really nice amount of water resistance to have, almost too much for something that is not considered a dive watch. But oh man, I love the way the light plays off of this dial. Just beautiful. Now, as far as the bracelet goes, this is a really, really nicely executed Jubilee, guys. It does have a 20mm lug, drilled lug holes, everything solid, screw in even, and then nicely articulated like any Jubilee you would expect. You can see the way it just conforms and just rolls, which makes it ultimately very, very, very comfortable. I think as far as proportions go, when you look at the bracelets versus the clasp versus the head, everything looks very nice. It doesn't look like anything's oversized or undersized, so really nice from that standpoint. This bracelet actually does also have an 18mm taper, so it starts up here at 20mm, goes down to 18, and then of course has about a 20mm clasp, which is very nicely done. Everything sits nice and flush, and then you do also have a nice myriad of options for micro adjusts, so that you can actually get this thing dialed in nice and perfect for whatever your wrist size might be, even in kind of those weird in-between sizes. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get this piece on the wrist. Okay, now as you can see on my 7¼ inch wrist, even if I put a little bit more arm in there, this thing wears really, really well. Get up close, of course the lens distortion is going to make it appear a bit bigger, but I think still that the way that the head wears on the wrist, the watch head, it wears really, really cleanly. And as you can see, nice side profile, very low, riding just right there on the top of the wrist. Nice little wrap to it there. Super comfortable. I wear my watches a little bit looser and of course beyond the wrist bone there, so I do tend to like to have a little bit more articulation, and basically the taper on the case and the case shape become a much larger issue when I'm moving my wrist around because of how low I wear it on the wrist versus wearing it further up here, where it's not really going to make a difference. So even from that aspect, if you're going to wear it a little bit loose, it still has great ergonomics, feels great. Of course, that Jubilee bracelet allows you to wear it a little bit more snug than you might wear something like a basic 3-link oyster style bracelet. Because of the extra articulation, you can basically wear it a little bit tighter and it still remain quite comfortable. So go ahead and you can see the way that it wraps. Beautiful transitions there on the finishing. Really nice. Fits wonderfully. And then you take a look at the clasp. Also really nice. So let's go ahead and get some low light transition and some lume shots going. All right, let's go ahead and hit the lights. So as you can see, that BGW9 lume is nice and bright. Of course, you're missing a little bit of lume there down at the 6 o'clock because they do have the date on this particular configuration, but they do have no date models there where you would see the 6 o'clock marker really well lumed. So you can see here, really well applied, even on this pre-production model. Typically what you're going to find is the pre-production models are going to be lacking in some of those refinements just because they were kind of, you know, put out there pretty quick and whatnot. There's a lot less QC involved because they're not being sold. They're basically just to show aesthetically what the watch is like. So functionality wise, sometimes you do take a hit when it comes to reviewing a prototype. But in this case, this one has really well applied lume, which just goes to tell you that the dial makers at Borealis source definitely do a really, really great job with the lume. Now, what I also like to do when it comes to lume shots is get a low light transition, which basically gives you an idea of what this watch will look like when not in direct sunlight, because you're not going to spend most of your time, of course, out in the middle of a field and whatnot. You'll be transitioning in and out of vehicles, in and out of you know, various buildings and whatnot, and you can see the way that the colors and whatnot are going to react to that kind of less than optimal lighting. And in this case, you can really get an idea of that beautiful dial and the way that it just does amazing things with the light as far as play goes. I mean, this thing is absolutely stunning. Now, another nice feature about getting this in the low light transition is it gives you a nice chance to take a look at that finishing on the bracelet, on the case. And now it's not being washed out by the studio lights. It's going to be very more subtly lit, and you can see as the light bounces off how uniform and how finely brushed the brushing is. You can get a little bit of a better idea on the luster of the polished surfaces and whatnot. But man, I'm very, very impressed with this dial. Look at that snap. Okay, so did I mention the pricing on this bad boy yet? It's pretty good. So the retail price is going to be actually, let's start with this. It's a $430 watch, which is outstanding. And essentially, you can buy it directly from Borealis, and right now it's just a 50% deposit, which is about $215, and they're estimated to ship in January of 2020. So I think that's an outstanding deal, guys. I mean, well under $500. This thing has a lot to offer. Great movement, super high quality, and then of course, although it is an homage, I think it does enough things differently to where it's not a lazy watch by any means. There's definitely been some design, there's been some thought that goes into this. Of course, yeah, they didn't have to proof out the fact that Explorer, this type of dial is going to do well, because Rolex already did that legwork. But as far as dialing in the size, dialing in, the color palettes, the choices, the key changes that they made as far as handsets, the finishing on the dial and whatnot. Those little changes definitely required them to get some market research, get with their user base, and really pick their brain. And I think what they came up with is a couple of really, really cool options. So closing thoughts. On the wrist, super classic proportions. It wears really, really well. The design elements mesh together really, really nicely. And a lot of it is because, of course, it's not like you're meshing an Omega with a Rolex, with a Panerai, with a Breitling. These are all design cues and design elements you've seen across various Rolexes, and different scales you've seen across various Rolexes. And I think that what Borealis has done with this model is put them together in a really fun and new, interesting way. Obviously, they're not reinventing the wheel or anything like that, but I would say that there's probably a lot of people who, if this thing had a Rolex, if it had the Rolex logo on it, this could be like an ideal setup for them, and who maybe really like the Explorer, but maybe think the 3-link Oyster is a bit boring, or maybe the monochromatic color tone could use some work. Maybe they should offer a blue dial, maybe a really cool kind of, chocolatey fume dial like this one. So, I mean, also the white dial option, right? They have all types of different ones. So, you definitely want to check their site to see what the current availability is. There's a bunch of different combinations. All of them are very, very cool. Now, as far as comparable models go, there are a ton of kind of that 40mm everyday Explorer-like market. That's very hot right now. So, having something that's an everyday watch with a fixed bezel, under 40mm, there's tons of competition out there. But you know what? Just the level of finishing, the spec level, I mean, being 300 meters water resistance, this thing has really got a lot to offer. So it's tough to really rival this if you can get along with the look. If you like the aesthetic, this thing on paper and on wrist is going to impress you. So if you can deal with the look of it, I think you'll really, really enjoy this timepiece. Bottom line, this is really just another really beautiful reimagining of a classic from Borealis, and they're really known for that. Kind of taking and distilling and taking some of those key elements, mixing them up, remixing them, and really putting together something that is not only fun to wear, but also fun to look at and fun to talk about and tell a little bit of a story. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do hit like, and if you're new, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.